I'm Josh.
And I'm Kate.
And this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. And today is the start of our 6-week-long holiday extravaganza, the Fanimated Gift Exchange.
Pew, 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 pew. Fireworks.
Fireworks, sparkling lights everywhere. This is new to Fanimated, doing something different this holiday season. Because, you know, like every single episode, I feel like I am just like shoving my favorite animated media down other people's throats.
Oh no.
And
Not
it's
that
one...
at all.
Good. But I do feel like a lot of the time I am really like working to like get my friends into my favorite shows and my favorite movies. And so this time I'm letting you guys, the guest hosts, choose what we're doing. And you'll notice that, you know, you might have heard Josh and Kate on the show before, but you haven't heard them together. Because in this Fanimated Gift Exchange, I've paired everyone up randomly. And so you're going to hear some different, people together talking about some different media. And so for this week and next week, I'll have Kate and Josh here. And they have both chosen a piece of media, in this case 2 movies, for the rest of us to watch, and we get to discuss it together. So it's kind of like a Secret Santa without it being secret.
It's just animated Santa.
Yes. Animated Santa.
And we know exactly what we're giving each other.
Yes.
do.
Obviously we talked about what we're talking, what the topic is beforehand, so we could watch it and think about it. So it was really fun to kind of see what everyone chose, and we won't tell you what next week's is, but Josh chose this week's movie. So Josh, what did you choose?
This week, I chose the animated movie Ratatouille.
Woo!
Yay!
Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat.
And I'm really excited to talk about this movie because I love it dearly.
Good.
Is there any specific reason why you chose it, or just your love for it?
There are a couple of reasons, I suppose, besides me just loving it. I do really enjoy the movie. It's very fun. I think it tells a story that I find very relatable, and so I like to talk about it. But I also I knew I was going to be paired with Kate, and so I thought maybe Kate would like this movie. I don't know if you've actually seen it. I still don't know if you've seen it before this moment, but I thought that it might be something that you would enjoy. So I picked something that I like that I thought you might also like, and maybe you have not seen.
I have seen this.
You have?
I haven't
Okay.
seen it. It's not on my frequently watched list, but I do remember seeing it in the theaters, and I have revisited it a few times over the years. So definitely a very enjoyable movie. And
Okay,
I was
cool.
very happy that you didn't pick something super obscure that I was like, what is this?
I thought about it. I thought about picking something kind of obscure, but I didn't want to I don't know. I thought it'd be something nice that we could all enjoy, and because this podcast is all about stuff that we can enjoy and we can be passionate about. I didn't want to push boundaries too much for Christmas or for the holidays.
Fantastic. I will say too, this is one that I haven't watched in so long, years and years. So it was definitely, it felt a little new again to me. Mm-hmm. But Josh, is this one that, since you love so much, do you revisit it a lot?
No, I don't revisit it a lot because honestly, it hits home for me in a way that I think if I watched it too often, it would be dangerous to my health. Because sure. I really, really enjoy it for its connections to the being an artist, because I still make a lot of my living as an artist, and I find a lot of the frustrations that Remy experiences kind of palpable, and so I don't like rewatching it too many times because it feels really strong.
Yeah.
and which is funny because those of you who listen next week, the movie has a very strong emotional connotations also, which we'll talk about later.
Yes.
So yeah, I picked it because of that, and I don't watch it like really regularly. It's probably been a couple years since I've seen it.
Certainly, yeah. So we're all kind of like getting back to it, which is fun. For those of you who don't know, Ratatouille is a 2007 Pixar film directed by Brad Bird. You might know Brad Bird from The Incredibles and other phenomenal Pixar and Disney films. And this is my official spoiler warning if you have not seen the film, because we are going to just dive into it and talk about all the plot things and all of everything.
We will spoil the soup.
We will spoil the soup. Exactly. So leave now while you have the chance.
I mean, this movie did come out in 2008, so if you haven't seen it by now,
yeah,
I'm sorry, it's going to be spoiled.
It's a long time.
Sorry. You're the one who clicked on this episode, so.
Right, it's your fault.
Oh, dear. So, Josh, would you do the honors and give us a brief synopsis?
Sure. Okay, so Ratatouille, the movie about a rat who wants to be a chef. Long story short, I'm going to give a really quick synopsis of it. Remy is a rat who lives in the country, and he gets pushed away from the countryside with his whole rat pack of other rats, and he has a highly developed sense of smell. And unlike all the other rats. And so he likes to combine flavors of things, and he kind of finds himself enjoying human foods. And he discovers a cookbook and a chef, Auguste, oh shoot, what is his name? Auguste Gusteau.
Gusteau.
And they, he's like watching him on TV and reads his book, and then he just falls in love with cooking. But he gets rushed away from his home and ends up in the sewers of Paris and finds himself in a French restaurant where he's observing this garbage boy who gets thrown into this restaurant. His name is Linguini, and he is terrible at cooking. And so Remy watches him be terrible at cooking and can't stand it. And so he dives in, throws himself into the kitchen, and fixes the mistake of this soup. And it causes people to love the soup. And Remy can't be there because, of course, he's a rat. And Linguini didn't actually make the soup, but it gets blamed upon him. And so now the two of them are forced to having to work together to recreate the soup and recreate other food items and like make really good food throughout this French restaurant. All the while, the like head chef is trying to kind of fight against Linguini's new ways of doing cooking. And of course, this is all with the subtext of a rat cooking in a kitchen, which is the last place a rat should be and would want to be. And everything proceeds forth, and of course the rat ends up cooking a really beautiful dish. There's all sorts of wonderful things that happen in the middle, which I'll skip, and so we can talk about those things later. And then he cooks a phenomenal dish that kind of saves the restaurant from bad critics who have kind of been pressing down against the restaurant due to its old traditional ways, and it is now kind of evolving into a new thing with the help of Remy the rat and Linguini the now quote chef.
Yes.
That's kind of the synopsis.
That's it. Yes, absolutely. The rat being where no rat would want to be except for him in the kitchen. And of course, like this film really shines with Remy and the other characters that make up the kitchen. Like this kitchen kind of becomes this whole other world, especially through a rat's eyes. And I always find that the most interesting aspect of like Pixar films in general is they like make you look at maybe ordinary things a little more closely. Like a kitchen is now like from the perspective of a rat, how does it look and what is it like? And so yeah, you have this whole, and plus the whole like, you know, feeling of Paris and all of that. So it is a very immersive film, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about like the daddy issues that Remy has because his father rat is there the whole time, you know, scolding him for doing anything with the humans and not eating garbage like the rest of them.
Exactly. So let's start with Remy. Like, let's just talk about some of the characters, and Remy is a good starting point as our, you know, protagonist. Is there a specific like scene, Kate or Josh, that like with that maybe culminates all of like Remy's character for you, or like is just a scene you like with him?
I think the first scene that Remy kind of finds himself in the kitchen and starts just throwing stuff in the soup and kind of experimenting that way. I think that scene is a perfect culmination of who Remy is as a character. I just feel like it's that moment that he just like lets this inner joy and passion that he's kind of been squashing a little bit, he finally gets to let that out, and just like his soul is just singing, and it's such a fun sequence. And Linguini's kind of just like, what's happening? I don't understand, when he kind of figures out that Remy is the one who's behind all this. But I just think that, yeah, as someone who like, I know Josh, kind of, you were talking about like being an artist and having that experience of just like letting your art kind of speak for yourself. I just think is a really good representation of Remy as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's that moment when he is like running by, he's trying to leave the kitchen, and there's this whole sequence where he's like dodging flames and footsteps, and then he sees the window and it's finally open. He's going to go for it, and he passes by the soup and happens to sniff it, and then is like, oh, wait. And then he like throws some bay leaves in there, and then like tries to leave again, and he's like, no, let's put some garlic in. And he just keeps tossing those in. That moment is so fun, and he just like can't even help himself. I think that that's a really great way to describe his experience, because he's just living and breathing that smell and that ability to tie those ingredients together, and he can't stop. I think my favorite scene for Remy is shortly after that one, when he and Linguini are learning to work together, and he's like sitting on his head, and he's like pulling the hairs, and he's learning that each time he pulls the hair, it moves Linguini's arm a certain way. It's so funny, because there's this part where he's like really gently scooping the like tortilla or something on the pan or something like that, and he like tosses it, and as he's flipping it, it's very gentle, and then whoop, it goes right out the window.
Yes.
I just love that. And there's this tiny moment where Linguini like opens up his blindfold and tries to look out, and then Remy just like puts it back over his eye. And I love that, because there's so much of the movie is quiet, is Remy and Linguini just working together, and Remy's not actually talking because he's a rat, and Linguini is the one who's like talking his way through it. And I think that that's a really fun relationship to have between the two of them.
Yes, absolutely. I would just echo that statement, especially with like in animation, in visual media in general. And I've said this before, and I'll say it a million more times. Like, I truly love when visual media will just, you know, focus on the visuals. Like, it can tell a story without the words, without dialogue, and Ratatouille does a lot of that. A lot of very like big physicalities and like just like physical humor, and that's like one of my favorite parts of this film for me. And Remy's character, like, he's a great protagonist because you immediately identify with him and connect with him, and like, you know, see his struggle, and just want to see what he can do, you know, and you want to see him, you know, be where he can't help being. So that's a lot of fun. What about Linguini? What are our thoughts on Linguini?
Linguini. Kate, what do you think?
Linguini is not necessarily my favorite character, but I think the things that I really enjoy about his arc is his kind of growth throughout and his connection with Remy. I think oddly Remy makes him a better person, and I think he learns and grows through the story because he sees kind of the impossible happening in front of him. A rat is like pursuing his dream of being able to cook. It just seems so bonkers and out there. And I think he, through Remy's influence, really is able to take more control of his own life. I think when we meet Linguini, he's just kind of coasting. Like, he gets this job because of his connections through his mom, and they talk about how he's kind of gone through a lot of jobs and hasn't really been able to find the right fit. And through meeting Remy, he kind of finds the passion in life that he was missing before. So
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that they made his character so derpy at the beginning. Like he's completely clueless about kitchens and cooking and how all that works. And so some of the things about him make him a little bit in some ways unlikable, because he's just like coasting, like you said, and he yells at the rat, and it feels a little bit like he's entitled to like everything that he's trying to get. He feels that way. But I do agree that his journey is really fun, because he does grow, and he's changed by something which I think is his underlying like secret strength, which is his like willingness to do anything, because he's willing to be a garbage person. He's willing to let a rat pull his hair and bite him and do all these things, and that kind of eventually causes him to stand up and work better and like be a better person and like be activated, because like you said, Kate, he's kind of coasting, and by the end he kind of activates and is like more engaged with life, which I think is a really great arc as well.
I would agree. Yeah, he just like takes life as it is and is like willing to try things, and is the first one to accept Remy the rat as a cook, and that's like ultimately like slowly more and more people accept Remy, and a lot of people don't, and Linguini was the first to like accept him, and Remy helps him in that like kind of giving him, even though it's feigned confidence, like it's still like leads to him being more bold in other areas of his life. So yeah, it's just like they make a good team, and obviously that's kind of like the crux of the film, is like them working together, and then when they're not working together.
Yeah. Kate, I'm really curious, what was your experience like the first time you watched Ratatouille, and what it's like now?
Oh man, I'm trying to think all the way back to 2008. I think when I saw it in the theater, I enjoyed it for what it was, but it didn't really speak to me on any personal level. And granted, like, I think I was in high school when this came out, so I think I kind of just enjoyed it for what it was. Now I feel like I can enjoy some elements of it a little more. I don't know that, you speaking to your connection to this film and kind of the, your connection through your personal artistry and how you feel like it reflects on you. I don't necessarily know that speaks to my experience with the film, which is perfectly fine. Yeah. I think I just kind of enjoy it I still just kind of enjoy it for what it is. I think now I can kind of appreciate some of the visuals a little more. I feel like being friends with Kelly, I feel like my eyes have been opened up to, oh yeah, this kind of element of animation isn't something I would have necessarily considered or even registered as just kind of a person who's not a visual artist and a person who just kind of enjoys the media for what it is. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know that it really like speaks to anything deep within me, but I enjoyed it then. I enjoy it now. That's kind of my answer.
Yeah, that's great.
Has it changed for you, Josh?
I would say it has changed, yeah. Because I would say, like you, Kate, when I first watched it, I was probably just like, oh, this is fun. And I enjoyed the concept of a rat sitting on a man's head. And I think that I didn't rewatch it, until sometime in college. And I think I was watching it with a friend, and they had pointed out that it kind of is about this journey of someone who wants to be an artist of some kind by being a chef, and is kind of held back by all these different things and kind of pushes through that in order to be their own version of an artist. And at the time when I watched it that second time when I was in college, I was studying theater, as you both know, and kind of coming to terms with like, what am I going to be? All these different things. And I had kind of fought some of my my own past with like people telling me that I shouldn't pursue that as a path. And so I related to like Remy's dad, for example. It wasn't my dad. My dad was supportive, but I had other people in my life who were not super supportive. And so watching that feeling that he experienced, I remember being able to relate to, and then started to tie those pieces together. And so the more times I watched it, the more times I was able to say, oh yeah, like there is some similarity to here. There is like this big drive to, you just kind of got to do it yourself, and you just have to follow that that passion that you have, regardless of what maybe an industry might tell you is the right way to do it, or is the tradition of how we do art, because creativity isn't in any, I no longer think that creativity is just about making a business or making a living. It's also about just doing all of the things that you feel called that you must do. And I think that was a lot of what really stood out to me, again, and maybe that speaks to where I am in life, but I think that has definitely changed. I see a lot more of the depth to it than I used to, and I don't know where I'm gonna go because I'm not at the end of my movie yet, So as an artist myself, like we just keep saying, in my journey, I haven't made my Ratatouille. I don't feel like I have done that. I'm still cooking, so to speak. And so it's interesting to see where I've been. And, let's say 20 years from now, I watch this movie again. Will I be able to say, hey, this was the moment when I made my Ratatouille and got the whatever. And so it's just, I think that's the parallel that I see to my life, and that's how I the lens through which I watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love focusing on that, and like the entire theme of the movie of like, anyone can cook, right? Yeah. And that can relate, or does it relate to other forms of art? That's the question. It's offering and ultimately maybe, at least for me, kind of like questioning what you perceive that cooking is, or whatever form of art is, because like, coming from Remy, it's completely different than obviously like it's been before, because it's a different perspective. So would you say, either of you, like this film, because it being like a Pixar and now Disney like film, do you think it is overly hopeful in its messaging about art?
Yes. Perhaps as a quick reaction, but yes, I think it is a bit overly hopeful. I think I think a lot of Pixar Disney movies have that, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's often very inspiring, especially when I was younger. But it's not as inspiring as I think I remember being more inspired last time. This time I was more like, oh yeah,
But do you think that's because like you've seen it before?
Maybe.
Or like not enough time has passed between viewings, or do you actually just kind of feel like, oh yeah, maybe it's a little too like cheery
Sure.
in its messaging.
That's a good point, Kate. It could be that it's too often that I've watched it, and maybe I just need to wait 5-10 years or something before I watch it again. Or maybe it's the fact that I've been a little more jaded than the last time I watched it. I was
just gonna say, are we too jaded now?
Oh no, a bunch of jaded artists here.
Could be. I read a review for Ratatouille from the New York Times that says it is a nearly flawless piece of popular art, as well as one of the most persuasive portraits of an artist ever committed to film. And I was like, that's glowing review, and I really don't agree. I think it's a great portrait of an artist. That's true. I wouldn't call it a flawless piece of popular art, but there are some really, really cool things about it. That's for sure.
Definitely. What are some of your other favorite things about the film that are so cool? Favorite scenes, favorite other characters? There are lots of other pieces and bits to this film that we haven't discussed yet. Anything that sticks out to you?
I just think the way that they captured the city of Paris, I think it's just so beautifully intertwined in the film. I think as I reflect on having just watched the movie, I think those are some of the moments that stick out the most to me, is just being able to see kind of the cityscape and how they really captured that. And it's such a corny thing to say that it's a character in the story, but it does truly feel like a character in the story.
The setting is always a character.
Yeah.
And they, of course, introduce us to this character of Paris very, very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that moment when he bursts through the sewers and he is on the top of the building and looks out over the night of Paris. Oh, it is truly beautiful. So I don't think that's corny at all, Kate. I love how they do the sense and the taste animations.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I totally agree with that.
So special. Everything gets dark, the setting disappears, and all you see is the person who's eating. And then they have those little swirls of color, and there's some music that goes with it. And then for each flavor, whether it's the cheese on one side, and then he bites into the strawberry on the other side, and it's a different thing. And then at the same time, and it's a new thing. And, I thought that was really a stunning way to portray sensation and flavor and taste, because everybody experiences it differently. And that was a nice way to for a viewer to also be able to see things differently about the flavor of cheese.
It almost captures every single sense that eating and tasting and smell, it's all intertwined. It's all kind of one thing. I feel like if COVID has taught us anything, that taste and smell in particular are very intertwined. And I feel like it was a beautiful way, a beautiful visual way to capture taste and what taste is like without the viewer actually having to taste anything.
Yeah. I think that's true. There was a note that I was reading about the production of Ratatouille, and they had a bunch of the filmmakers and the animators take cooking classes. And so they were in LA, or I think there was a guy who was in Paris who interned at a French restaurant and then came back and reported about what he saw and what he smelled. And through their conversations of having cooking classes and having people come in and teach them about food and how do you make food look appealing, as animators, of course, they needed to make that true. They needed to see, how do you show digital art that looks just as tasty as real food, you know? And I think it's really cool that they used those real things, and they probably had conversations about, you know, how does it smell? What does it feel like to you? If I know anything about working at a restaurant, which I have done for the past couple of years, and I learned about wine tasting, everybody tastes wine a little bit differently too. And there's like a way to be able to describe your palate that only you can do. And you have to like get familiar with associating flavors to different sensations in your mouth. And I think like, it's just so crazy that you like to be able to convert that onto a digital screen that like makes you actually go, yes, I want that also. It's like really a special thing. So I think that it's amazing that they were able to do that, because I always wanted strawberries after those little scenes.
Yes, it really is an amazing visual cue. And not only visual, but like musically, they like have different music cues that go along with it that the whole thing makes you want to eat a strawberry. And like I'll say too, like for me, like just the music in the whole film is really really well done, and a lot of fun. So I think that adds a lot to the atmosphere and the tone of the film. Did you want to talk about Colette?
Oh yes. I have some thoughts about Colette.
Okay, tell me about Colette.
I don't know that I feel like theoretically, I want to say that she is my favorite character, because there are so many boxes that she ticks off for me. You know, I love that we have this really strong, clearly very talented woman who's working in this kitchen with all these men. But my butt in my feelings about her is that she falls for Linguini so fast, and he has nothing to recommend. The one good thing he has going for him before we get to the end of the movie, where he's like grown and matured a little bit and kind of has a little more footing in his life, the one thing that he has going for him is the view from his apartment. But his tiny, tiny little apartment isn't enough to recommend him. And I wish that there was just more of a strong female presence, because it's all men except for Colette.
Is. Yes.
Like, they don't even have any female rats. And I just, as much as I think that she is a great addition to the film, I want more from a girl Colette.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a really great a great observation to make too, because that's one of my complaints as well. Is it's very male heavy, very male dominated, which is I suppose appropriate for maybe the time period and the place and the setting and whatnot, but they didn't have to do that.
And I think truly the setting is really kind of as little as I know about the food industry and how kitchens like this work, like it is known to be a very male dominated field.
Yeah.
And I hope, this was in 2008. I hope things have changed since then. Maybe they haven't, but I don't know. A point that what was I gonna say? Oh, I feel like kind of harkening back to your earlier question, Josh, about my experience with the film. I have always been someone that, and this isn't necessarily true of a lot of my favorite movies. I have many favorite movies where there's very little female characters, but I have always found myself drawn to stories that center around female characters because it speaks to my own personal experience, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of one element of this movie, seeing it kind of I don't even remember how old I was, seeing it at the age that I was whenever I saw it, I think I was kind of just like, yeah, this is kind of a universal theme, but there's not a lot that's really drawing me into making it feel super personal in the way that I'm sure, you watch the movie and go, oh, I can see myself in that experience. Yeah,
well, that makes sense. And I really value your perspective on that. So how would you have changed Colette if you could have?
Yeah, I did think about this. I feel like if we were going to have some kind of romantic connection within the film, it might have been a little more interesting to give Remy the love interest. Not someone to distract him from reaching his goal or his passion, maybe coming alongside and supporting him, either in addition to his brother or, instead of the brother, and then making Colette just more of the mentor figure for Linguini as opposed to the romantic interest.
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of still gives you your goal within the storytelling, but I just feel like we get to that point where she kisses him when he's going psycho.
Yeah.
And then that just like loses all of her character, because it's like we've built her up to be this kind of, and not that those two things are necessarily like mutually exclusive, but I feel like it just weakens her character just a little bit, and I want her to be a little more fastidious.
Yeah, I relate to that too, because I think that the thing I don't particularly like about the film is the romantic aspect. It does kind of feels like it is undeserved, and I think that to me it kind of came across in sometimes that Colette falls for him because he's, quote, good at cooking.
Yeah.
And it's like, so she likes him for his skill. And it I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of that romantic draw in a movie. I just don't think that it's very whole. It's very American, like, oh, someone falls for you because you're really talented. And I just don't think that that's a really strong relationship thing. And so while it does happen, though, in real life, I think that they could have changed it a lot. I would have loved to see a Colette that was the mentor, like the wise Obi-Wan for Linguini. I think that would have been really interesting. And it is curious that they didn't use female rats, too. Like, I would have loved to see that, too.
Absolutely. Like, even if they just gave Linguini, honestly, just more character traits to, like, make it, like, because I definitely think it still could have just been, like, a friendship between Colette and Linguini. Right. But, like, if you're going to do something in Paris and you want to add a love story, then, just give us more of a reason to believe the relationship other than Linguini's good at cooking. Yes. So if there were some moments of some work, maybe he does some nice things, around the kitchen or helps, I don't know, just there could have been other little things. But regardless, like, at least they do kind of have Colette as a super BA, like, I'm not messing around character. And, it definitely is something that could have made it better, but it's still a fun and good movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even if that could be changed, I agree. So Kate, what's something that when you watch the film, it stands out to you, like, that's memorable?
I think mostly like the visuals and the music, I think, really stand out in this film to me, maybe a little more so than the plot of the film. I just think kind of the marriage of the two really kind of gets you is I shouldn't generalize this. I feel like the marriage of the two within the context of this film draws me into the film more than the concept itself, if that makes sense. So as I'm watching, I find myself enjoying more of like, oh, this cool animation bit, or this song that they use within the soundtrack. I think I even mentioned at some point there's a song playing in the background, and I kind of mentioned to Kelly as we were watching, oh, like, this is really nice, and this kind of just makes the moment soar a little more than if it was just, I don't know, something else. But I feel like those elements together is kind of what stands out for me in this film.
Solid. I wish I knew more about some of the animation moments that, like, like how they do those things. Kelly, you always know about those things. Do you have anything to say?
So for this film, well, I'll just say, like, it definitely still stands, it holds up. Like,
yes, it does.
It still looks great. Like, we were kind of talking about how, like, animation, and obviously it's gotten better and better and better, like, as all technology has, but, like, we've, this era of animation, like, was finally getting into a groove, like, almost to that, like, the leaps were bigger back then, and so, like, this was kind of one of those, like, pinnacles. Not to say that animation has plateaued at all, but, like, we've gotten to the point where it's just more and more detail, and this was kind of, like, at the brink of that, I guess, of, like, we've reached kind of, like, some really good stylistic choices, I guess. So that's, like, in general, I just really love. I love the lighting in this film. They have a lot of scenes at night.
Yeah.
And so they've got, like, you know, when they're at the river and there's just, like, street lamps or whatever, or, you know, they're in the apartment, or, you know, or he's scurrying around the insides of the apartment building, you know. So there's always some really interesting lighting choices. And then the other thing I'd say, like, animation-wise, was there's a lot, and I talk about this a lot on the podcast too, is I've got to mention water.
Yes.
Water is infamously challenging in animation, and there are quite a few water scenes for this being, like, a 2000s film. And, like, you know, when you compare it to other Pixar films, like Finding Nemo, for example, Finding Nemo doesn't works within water. There's less, the hard part is coming out of the water. So it's harder to make things wet than to be in the water, right? Mm-hmm. But also, they weren't working with as much hair. And sure. Remy is all hair. And Remy gets dumped in water.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's the, like, crazy sewer scene at the beginning when he gets separated from his family, and that's, like, a pretty impressive scene. And then even just, like, Linguini jumping into the river to, like, get him again, and then Linguini's dripping wet, and, like, you know, stuff like that just takes a lot of extra effort when it comes to 3D animation, and I think they did a good job.
Yeah, I also read a thing about that moment when he he jumps into the river. They had a staff member at Pixar who wore that chef's outfit and an apron and everything, and then jumped into the pool at Pixar, and then they took pictures of them to see, like, how wet are they? Where is it kind of translucent? Where does it stick to the body? Where does it not? And I think that's, like, a really great way to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, guys, animators are more than just artists.
Right.
They are quite often, like, filming, like, they're acting and they're doing all these crazy things because they need references for what they're making. Mm-hmm. And so those are always my favorite things to see. Like, if you know, Google and, like, you know, pick a movie and then look for, like, their references for it, you will often find lots of videos online that are, like, just the animators acting out the scene or whatever. And animators do so many crazy and wonderful things. So
I think of that part in the Frozen 2 documentary where the animator who is animating Into the Unknown. She films herself kind of running and stopping so that she can kind of get the reference point for the physics of it all, and when you kind of stop yourself really suddenly.
And her boyfriend is, like, on a skateboard next to her filming it. Like, So I always think that's pretty fun.
That's awesome.
Well, as we're wrapping up conversation here, there is one more thing I want to mention, and I think that's kind of, like, maybe one of the most well-known scenes in this film, and it's Ego eating the ratatouille. And I feel like that's just, like, I don't know, like, a big piece of, like, pop culture.
Yeah.
In a way. And, like, what my question is, what is it for you that is your ratatouille that brings you back to your childhood? Like, it doesn't have to be a food, but if it is, that'd be great. But, like, what Is there something that you're like, it just transports you back to
That's
that
such
time
a good
and place?
question.
Like ego being transported by the Ratatouille.
I think I have my answer. This is so cheesy. I feel like listening specifically to the Phantom of the Opera is one of those things. As silly as it might sound,
I love that.
that was like my gateway into the world of musical theater.
Yes.
And that really opened my world up to the thing that my world then and now still revolves around.
Yeah.
And yeah, that just like listening to that kind of brings me back to that place of just like being like, what is this? What is this kind of new world that I'm being ushered into that I've never quite experienced before? So that's my answer.
I love that. Phantom of the Opera. Classic.
Oh man, that's a good question. I might have to think about that for a second longer.
Sure. I'll tell you mine.
Okay.
At least the thing that pops up to my mind first is like prairie grasses and prairie flowers. And like we had like a big prairie grass area that my dad planted, and like I'd always play in there and like pull all the like seeds off of the grass, and like so I can't help myself, but when I like walk past prairie grass now, like I still like pull the seeds off and like just I don't know, is there something about that like tactile experience that's like back to my childhood.
That's so sweet.
So,
yes.
that would be
Okay,
mine.
you've reminded me of what I think would be mine, which is the sound of running water in the woods. Like
yes.
that little trickle sound of the river or something like that. That to me sends me back to just being a kid and running around in the woods with my family or my friends. I just did that a lot. and so that is a big source of inspiration to me. And so anytime I go hiking or walking and I hear that, I have to go to the running water and I have to put my fingers in it.
Yes. I love that. Yeah, it's just a very, common experience, like a very universal experience. I think that there are things in our lives that no matter how far away we are from those times or those memories, like something as simple as like a dish of ratatouille will bring us back,
Yeah. So. If I had to pick a food that brings me back for a taste thing, it would, this sounds silly, but it would probably be ramen noodles.
Like the packets?
Like the packet.
Fantastic.
I had so much of that growing up, so that would probably bring me right back.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Mine, like, I don't know. This is such a Midwestern, like, random dish. But, like, my mom would make, I don't even know what they're called, actually. But, like canned, like, croissants or canned,
crescent rolls?
Crescent rolls, right?
Yes.
But she'd, like, put them in a muffin tin. And then, like, there's meat and cheese in it.
Ooh.
And then it's cooked like that. I don't know what that is called. But it's like the most simple, like, Midwestern dish you can think of.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, that brings me back.
You know those, I think most people make them around Christmas time, the little peanut butter cookies with the Hershey's Kiss in it.
Oh, yeah.
Those always bring me back to being a little girl with my grandma.
Love it.
Because we would have tea time together, and we would have orange soda instead of tea, and then she would make those cookies.
That's so sweet.
I love that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's so nice. I feel like everybody has those holiday dishes or smells, like when I smell banana bread, that brings me back to holiday times because we had that a lot. And so I feel like holidays are a really great memory to associate with smells and tastes as well. So I love that, Kate. It's nice.
Well, now that we're all really hungry, we should probably go get a snack. But thank you both so much for joining me for Fanimated Gift Exchange. I'll be back with these two next week to discuss Kate's choice of film. It's another Disney one, so get ready. And again, thank you so much for listening. You can hear dozens of bonus episodes and vote for upcoming episode topics at patreon.com/Fanimated. Thank you to everyone who already is a member of the Fanimated crew over there. You make this podcast possible, so thank you. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Fanimated Podcast to stay up to date with all things animated. And don't forget to leave a rating and review to tell us what you'd like us to watch next. The music is written by Jamie Krause and the art is done by myself. You can find me on Instagram at CandorDraw. We'll be back next week with more animation discussions, so in the meantime,
stay tuned
and stay animated.
And who's your favorite Ratatouille character?
Oh. I like... Who do I
wrong.
like?
The answer is Remy. There is only one answer.
There is one correct answer. Everyone else is garbage.
Just like the food.
Just like the food.